Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and man, I really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel and spending some time with me on the video today. A little bit different video today. I've had several requests here lately about people that say they want a long form video. In other words, something longer than my normal 5 or 10 minute videos. They want something they can listen to while they're driving somewhere, or if they got an hour to kill in the evening. So I sort of wanted to give you guys that. I thought about the topic to do it on, and I think that I want to talk about just a real wide-ranging talk about on what I have learned about bass fishing through my 50 or 45 years anyway of tournament experience, because tournament fishing is a great learning ground as far as it pushes you to to go further than what you normally would past your comfort levels. And I've fished hundreds and hundreds of tournaments all over the country, all over the world actually, and learned quite a bit. And I just wanted to sort of pass along some of the things that sort of stand out to me in today's video that I think is going to really help your fishing out after you get done listening to all this. Also, guys, if you like the content here on Intuitive Angling and you want to give something back for this super long video here, the best thing you can do, guys, is just go into my description of this video, use and bookmark my Tackle Warehouse link for all your tackle purchases. All you guys that are doing that, you're really supporting the channel. And if you guys buy something on Tackle Warehouse and you use that link in my description, the channel gets a small percentage of the commission on each sale. So just by purchasing tackle through that link is a good way to help the channel out. So big thank you for me and my family, for everybody that's been doing that. Okay, guys, this is excuse me, I got a real bad cold right now. If you start sniffling and hacking and having to blow my nose, excuse me, because I'm into the second day of this bad cold right now. So anyway, let's sort of get started. We'll start from the beginning, and I'll sort of tell you the process and some of the things that have really stood out to me as far as that have been very big learning experiences to me that has helped me become a better angler. So when I first started out, you got to remember, guys, back in the late 70s and early 80s, the access to information was practically non-existing. The only information that you could get on fishing was you could read magazines like Bassmaster or Fishing Facts or something like that. And those articles were normally written by outdoor writers. And back then, outdoor writers, they thought that they knew more than pros did. They rarely interviewed pros for articles or other anglers. They just wrote articles based upon their own experience, which was very limited. So the magazines offered very little information, very basic 101 information at the most. So the only other way that you could really get information was to fish with other people that were good anglers, or to try to talk to some people that were good anglers. And a lot of people didn't want to share their secrets. So it was a very, very difficult time to learn. So what I had to go through for decades, actually, and really until, there'd been a social media, is this learning process had to take place by yourself on the water. And one of the things that I want to reiterate here, and I want to stress more than anything that I have learned in fishing, is that you have got to spend time on the water. It's like, if you don't spend time on the water, you can spend days and days listening to YouTube videos and gathering information from watching fishing shows, but unless you actually get out on the water and experience that firsthand, you don't have that connection. And I see this all the time, like the guys that I take out on my on-the-water lessons. These are usually anglers that they know a lot, and they spend a lot of time on YouTube and watching shows, but they all tell me it's just not the same. It's like when I get out in the boat with you and I can see exactly how you explain how you're working that jerk bait or how you're flipping that jig or whatever it is, it's completely different than absorbing that information on, some type of more of a non-engaged aspect from it. So first thing that you have to do that I've learned, guys, is there's nothing that is going to beat on the water time, not only by yourself, but with other good anglers. Now, you don't want to get too reliant on fishing with other people as far as to teach you stuff, but it's good to go out with people that are really good at certain techniques, because they can show you how to catch the fish, that you can witness it firsthand, and then you can take that information out and go out by yourself and do it on your own. Now, this is where one of the things that I found out in tournament fishing that stands out almost above anything in your own success. It's like fishing and techniques and developing new techniques and being successful on the water. So much of it is up to your own creativity and ingenuity and imagination. That is the strength that every one of us has as anglers, and that you can't ever forget that. Because let me give you guys an example of what I'm talking about here. Let's say that you guys had a chance to go fishing every day for a week with Kevin Van Dam, or whoever your favorite all-time bass angler is, expert angler, Rick Clunn, Kevin Van Dam, Roland Martin, whoever it may be. Now, if you're up front with Kevin Van Dam, or and you're fishing along there, and you're going down a bank, say you're just going down a rocky bank or a lay down bank, and you can't do anything that Kevin's doing. Say Kevin's throwing a crankbait down this rocky bank, or he's throwing a spinnerbait around lay down trees. You have to do something that you think is going to work without any type of influence from Kevin. Now, what happens is that sometimes Kevin's technique is going to beat you, but sometimes if you fish long enough, you're going to beat Kevin with your technique, something that he may not have tried. He may have thought like slow rolling the spinnerbait next to this lay down log is a way to catch this bass, and you may figure out that they don't want that spinnerbait. You can take a shaky head and you can toss that shaky head up there on a light head around that lay down tree, and that non-aggressive fish will hit that. And Kevin may never have even thought about that concept, or he may have been using a white and chartreuse spinnerbait, and then all of a sudden you throw a black spinnerbait and catch him, and he doesn't catch him. So don't discount the power of your ingenuity and imagination and creativity, because, guys, I can tell you one thing right now, I have seen it over and over again, is that creativity and imagination most of the time will outproduce experience in bass fishing once you get the basic experience. Now, if you don't know anything about fishing, that's different. But if you're, say, just an average bass angler, and you're up against a professional angler, and say that professional angler has so many years of experience, and they've won a lot of tournaments, and they get locked into the way they like to fish, most of the time, guys, if you're a fresh into the sport and you don't know much about the sport, but you know how to catch bass, your creativity and your imagination is going to outproduce that experience, because bass are constantly evolving and they're constantly changing. And what they do is, like, they get conditioned really quick to a lot of different stuff out there. Another thing that I've found out in my years of tournament fishing is that people do not give bass credit they deserve for how smart as they are, and how quickly they evolve and how quickly they learn. And I use this reference all the time. Bass have been on this planet. There's been fossilized remains of the largemouth bass lineage dating back over 3 million years they found in Texas. So when you talk about a species that has been able to stay on this planet for 3 million years, longer than humans have, you're talking about a pretty adaptable, smart creature. So don't ever underestimate. Don't listen to these guys that say bass are these little pea-brain creatures that don't know any better. You can't equate human intelligence with a bass's intelligence. But what the point is they evolve quickly, and they learn quickly about what not to hit and what things that are actually real food. Now, let me give you guys an example of what I'm talking about here. There was a period of from about 1984 to about 1990 where I was really getting into tournaments, and I was fishing the Bassmaster Top 100s. I was fishing a lot of local stuff. I was doing really good in tournaments. I was winning tournaments, qualifying for classics. I was doing really good. Probably 90% of the time during that period, the only thing that I fished with was a flipping stick. I had 30-pound high visibility strand line on that looked like glows in the water. I had a half-ounce black jig with either a black frog or a blue frog on it, pork frog, and that's all I fished with. And for about almost a 10-year period, I just kicked butt with it everywhere I went. And it didn't matter where it was, Missouri, Texas, Alabama, anywhere I went, that's what I fished with. Now, guys, if you go and run those same lakes that I'm talking about, and you put your flipping stick on with 30-pound test, high visibility, monofilament line, and a half-ounce black jig with a black pork frog on it, you are going to struggle to catch bass anywhere. That is not that's become a very specialized technique. There's small windows conditionally and time of the year where that will work, but it's just a fraction of a percentage of what it used to work. Now, why is that? Because think about it. How many bass in 2024, if you surveyed the bass population, how many bass out there have seen a black jig or black jig with a black pork frog on it, or something like maybe an old lazy Ike or a hellbender or an old bomber crankbait that we used to rip them on years ago? They haven't seen it. I can promise you right now, guys, if you go down to Table Rock Lake right now, there's a generation of bass that have never seen a hellbender. They've never seen a lazy Ike. They've never seen a creek chub wigglefish that caught the world record bass back in 1932. And they don't see hardly anyone fishing with black jigs with black pork frogs on 30-pound high visibility line anymore. And they won't bite it. You could go down there. I venture to say that if you took a hellbender to Table Rock Lake like right now, or if you took it to Lake Murray or Cumberland Lake or Lake Lanier, if you take a white hellbender, I bet you can fish down there for a week and not catch a bass on it. I bet you could go to any one of those lakes I just talked about, take 30-pound high visibility line with a half-ounce solid black jig with a solid black pork frog, and I bet you if you're lucky during the week you might catch one or two under the right conditions. So the point of what I'm talking here is that bass evolve quickly to to not hit certain baits. That's why you always have to experiment, and you always have to use your imagination and creativity to change colors, to know when to change colors, to know when to change lure profiles, to know when to change lure sizes. That is one of the biggest keys that I've learned from bass fishing, is you have to understand and you have to learn what it means by the mood and the personality of the bass, which gets us into another topic. When you're thinking in terms of how you want to fish, or how you want to catch fish, or how you want to go about the technique that you use for that day, the first thing that you have to do when you put your boat in the water in the morning, you have to say to yourself, okay, what is the mood and the personality of the bass? Don't ever forget those two words, guys, mood and personality of the bass. The mood and the personality of the bass will dictate the technique that you want to use in terms of lure categories. You don't know what they are. That's the thing about it. It's like some days the mood and the personality of the bass, they are in a chasing mode, and they'll want a moving bait that moves horizontal through the water column, like a chatterbait or a spinnerbait or crankbait. On another day, and it could be very similar conditions, they may not be in a chasing mood. They may be a little bit more active based upon whatever variables that cause them to do that, which is sort of a mystery. And they may want to slow bait. You may have to pitch and flip a jig. You may have to drag a football head. You may have to cast a Texas rig worm. You may have to throw a shaky head or a Ned rig based upon the mood and the personality of the fish. And the only way that you know what that is you have to experiment until you figure out what that is. Now, there are some clues. Say, for example, if you get out there and the water temperature is 65 degrees and it's cloudy and windy and it's maybe raining a little bit, there's a good chance they're going to hit a moving bait. That's sort of the, what bass do. And there's a good chance if you go out there and it's a bright bluebird sky and there's not much wind, that they're going to want to slow bait on the bottom, unless they want a topwater or something. So there's some foundational elements that we talk about here on the channel that can give you a starting point. But a lot of times that's not the case at all. Go back to the day that I just talked about being cloudy and windy. Probably the best flipping day that I ever had, flipping heavy cover, was on a day where the thunderstorms were rolling through all day long. It was heavy rain, cloudy, lightning coming down, thunder, and I whacked them flipping a jig and flooded willow trees. So there's those type of situations. Other times, guys, I've had some of my best days fishing a topwater lure on days where there was no wind and it was bright sun out. So that's one of the things that makes bass fishing the most difficult sport on the planet, is you never know what those fish are going to do. So you got to have a starting point at least. But one of the things that I have learned is I sort of give myself the 30-minute rule. And what I mean by that is if I think something's going to work, and I'll try it. If I try it in an area that I think there's some bass in, and I fish it for 30 minutes and don't get any bites at all, then I'll make some type of a change. I'll change either maybe the lure color, the lure profile, maybe the the style of the lure, you know, may go from a moving bait to slow bait, excuse me, until I hit upon, you know, what the fish want. And once you do start catching some fish, then you can also improve upon that, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to maximize the area that you're fishing with the technique. And what I mean by that is when you pull up on a point or on a row of boat docks or something and you start catching a fish or two, you got to have this mentality that, okay, I'm going to catch every fish that's there on that point. I'm going to catch every fish that's underneath that dock. And in doing that, you have got to adjust your techniques, your casting angles, your boat positioning, your colors, in order to maximize that. My buddy Aaron Martins was a master at that. He was the absolute master. He'd get out on a point and he would fish like a snail. Say we were on a main lake point and he catches one or two on a jerkbait. His mind was like, okay, there's probably 30 fish down there. I'm gonna catch every one of them. This was back before the advent of the cheater box, where people could just roll up and know how many fish is there, which you don't ever want to fall into that trap, guys. You want to keep the magic and the mystery alive. So Aaron would okay, he'd catch a couple on a jerkbait, then he'd switch to a little shaky head. Then he might catch a couple on a shaky head. Then he'd switch colors on the shaky head. He'd switch size of the head on the shaky head. He'd switch how he retrieved the shaky head. Then if that didn't work, maybe he went to a scrounger. And he would, once he knew there were some bass in that area, he would change his techniques until he figured out how to catch what he thought was every bass on that particular point. So that's a good thing to tuck away there. Another thing, I'm just going through random stuff, guys. We could do a week-long video on this, but I'll try to keep it shorter. Some of the stuff that just comes to my mind. Another thing that comes with that is you have to really understand the importance of color. Color, a lot of people say that, man, color's not that big of a deal, Randy. You know, bass can't tell colors. Chartreuse and white look the same to a bass. You know, that's not that big of a deal. Guys, color's huge in fishing. I don't care what anybody says. One of the elements and one of the things that I have figured out and found out in my 40 plus years of tournament fishing is that color adjustments are massive. And again, you don't really know what color to choose until you experiment. Yeah, there's foundational things that we talked about, just like with the lure selection. You know, like on dirty water, sometimes your brighter colors, your darker colors are going to be better. In clear water, maybe the translucents are going to work better. But ultimately, there are other factors that come into that. The current, the wind, the sunlight angle, the species of bass, everything, time of day. They may want a certain color lure at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then you go back to that same area you caught them on at 9 o'clock in the morning, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they want a different color because the sunlight angle's coming through. The shade may be there, or maybe you lost your shade. So it really behooves you to carry a large selection of colors in whatever you're using. If you're throwing crankbaits, make sure you got a little bit of everything. Make sure you got shads, perch patterns, bright colors, translucent colors, metallic finishes, flat finishes. If you're throwing worms, you make sure you got a variety of different green pumpkins with different flake in it, you know, red bugs, June bugs, black, everything. Because there's going to be one that they prefer more than anything else. I have found that over and over again. If you get into an area where there's a lot of fish there, yeah, you can catch fish on a lot of different baits, but what you want to try to do is you want to try to find the best bait for that particular area. And there's always one that you hit on specifically. That's why, if you guys have been with my channel very long, you know how much of a stickler I am for different type of colors. That's why I use dyes a lot on my trailers. I use accent colors on my jigs. You know, I modify different crankbait colors. I have found that that's a really big deal with that. Another thing that's really important in bass fishing that you're going to have to understand is casting angles and boat positioning. This is one of those things that a lot of people don't pay much attention to because it's not flashy. One of the things that I have figured out or found out here on YouTube is that a lot of people don't have patience to want to learn the important things. They want an instant gratification. Those are usually the best videos, but those are the ones that are least they're least effective in allowing you to grow as an angler. Two of the things that will really help you out, guys, is learning about casting angles and boat positioning, because when you're approaching cover, and I don't care if that cover is a drop off offshore, or it's a river ledge, or if it's a boat dock, or if it's a lay down tree, or if it's a grass edge, the angle of your boat and the angle of the cast that you make is so critical in generating strikes. And the best thing that you can do is you can pattern that a little bit, because bass will set up on certain types of cover based upon things like current and wind and sunlight conditions, sun angle, shade. So, depending upon the time of the year, that can be a wide range of things they prefer. So pay close attention to your casting angles and the things that are generating strikes. And in correlation with that, in order for you to make that correct casting angle, you have to also have the right boat positioning. And probably one of the things, guys, I'd recommend more than anything that's going to help your fishing out is spend time practicing on your trolling motor. A lot of people would never do that. They would say, I'm not going to go out there and waste my day running my trolling motor. That's probably some of the best practices you can do as far as learning how to understand how your boat drifts into pieces of cover, and how the wind and the current influence the speed of the drift into the cover. Now, one of the things we've talked about here on the channel before that doesn't seem to get any interest from people, but I keep trying to hammer it into everybody's head how important it is when you're working down a section of shoreline or structure or fishing targets or whatever, you have got to find the right pace for that day. It's not a matter of fishing too fast or too slow or positioning your boat in one way or the other. You have to find out the best angle and the best pace. And the best pace is to be able to approach a piece of cover quietly. In other words, let's say if we're coming up on a laydown tree in the water, you want to make sure that your boat glides into that piece of cover to where the glide slowly stops. You are in perfect position to make a cast around that piece of cover. Now, that distance will depend on the technique that you're fishing and the lure, but you don't ever want to come into that piece of cover too fast where you're on your trolling motor and you've got to reverse your trolling motor and you backwash stuff into the cover, or you're even on your trolling motor, period. Those bass are smart. When you if you're coming up, you see a lay down log or something on the bank and you shut your boat down 100 yards away from that, those bass know you're there. They can hear your outboard motor from 100 yards away. So they're conditioned to noise, but you don't want to make excessive noise. So boat positioning is very critical in terms of coming up to that piece of cover quietly and as stealthy as you can. If there's a 4 or 5 pound bass in that particular laydown tree that you're coming up on, your odds of catching that bass go through the roof if you glide up slowly onto that piece of cover where you're not on the trolling motor and make your presentation. But if you come up on that piece of cover where you're on your trolling motor, you're on and off your trolling motor, and you're 30 foot away from the cover and you're hitting that trolling motor, your odds of catching that bass go way down. So that's another aspect. So I'm going to take a quick break here, guys, and blow my nose, and I'll get right back here. Okay, guys, I'm back. Got my nose blown and got a drink of water here. And if you guys like this, guys, if you like the longer content here, let me know and drop a comment, because if we get a lot of views on this, I'll probably do it some more. But if you guys don't like it, I'll probably go back to the short videos. So I'd like to go longer here, but feel like I just need to get in bed right now. Man, my head feels like it's just so freaking tight. You know how it is when you got a cold. But anyway, like I said, this conversation that we're having, guys, this is a lifelong conversation. You're never going to learn everything about the bass, one of the things, but just touching on a few highlights in today's video. That's speaking of that, guys, that's another thing that you have to remember is that you're never going to learn everything about bass. There is so much. I don't know a fraction about bass fishing. I mean, I know what I have experienced, and that's what I share with you guys in my videos, are things that work for me. But I'll admit it, and anybody that has fished very long will admit it, is we don't know that much about bass, and that's the way it needs to be. You don't want to know about them, and that's one of the reasons, guys, I rail against this whole technology and live scope, is that it shortens that learning curve in a destructive way. Because once you learn everything about the fish, and once the magic and the mystery goes down, and you don't learn through trial and error and actually fishing, it diminishes everything that the sport is about. So don't feel that if you think that you have so much to learn that you're all alone, because we all do. So always remember that. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk about, these are things, like I said, that's going to really, really help your success, guys. And some of them are boring, but you can't discount the basics. The basics on any sport are the key to success. If you don't understand the fundamentals, you can't understand and you can't master the more complex aspects of it. Now, I'm gonna put this number one, guys. If I could give you one piece of advice that will help you catch more bass, and it doesn't sound flashy, but it is the number one thing, is you've got to be as good as you possibly can as a caster. You have got to master casting, because if you don't master casting, you're never going to be able to catch that many bass. If you can't put that lure where you want it to, your odds of catching fish go way down. And I see this all the time, guys, because I'll go back to fishing with co-anglers or guys I take out on the water lessons. Let's say, for example, we're skipping wacky rigs underneath boat docks, and that's where the fish are. And it's like, if you can get that bait back underneath that dock, you're gonna get a bite. Or if you can skip that wacky worm underneath that walkway, that dock, you're gonna get a bite for sure. I have been in boats, guys, where the fish are, it's as soon as the bait hits the bottom, they're gonna get it, but they can't get the bait there. As hard as they try, they can't get it. They miss it by 2 or 3 or 4 feet. They miss it by a foot. They just simply can't get it there. And if they do get it there, it's after 50 tries. And that is the thing right there that a lot of people don't understand, is you have got to be able to put your bait where you want it. I don't care if it's casting it next to a boat dock or casting it next to a lay down log or flipping it in a little hole in the grass that big. If you can't put it there, you're not going to get a bite. So don't ever discount how important that is. And it's like, I can take somebody out. I'll tell you guys something right now. I could go into Walmart right now and I could pick out anybody in the store there they don't even know what a bass is. I could spend a day with them and do nothing but teach them how to cast, where we'll set up targets and I will teach them how to hit that target and how to be a good caster. And I can take them out the next day and on the lake, and we're going to catch some bass. They're going to catch bass because they can. If I say put it right there next to that dock, they're going to be able to put it right there, even though they don't know anything about bass fishing. I could say put that lure right there by that dock and reel it in, and show them how fast to reel it in. They're going to catch a fish. Then I could take somebody out, and I've done this before, that knows a lot about bass fishing. They've watched every YouTube video. They know every pro that are out there, but they can't hit the side of a semi-truck casting at it. And I'll tell them, it's like, put that lure right next to that dock, or put that lure right next to that stump, and it'll go 2 or 3 or 4 feet away from it, or it'll fall 2 feet in front of it, or it'll go behind it. And as much as they know about fishing, they're never going to catch a fish. So one of the best things that you can do is do nothing but practice your casting on a regular basis until you can do it all. You need to be able to pitch and flip. You need to be able to pitch and flip with your left hand, and you need to be able to pitch and flip with your right hand. You need to be able to transfer that flipping stick from your left hand to right hand effortlessly. You need to know how to make an overhand cast for a long bomb cast. You need to know how to make a sidearm cast. You need to know how to make an underhand cast, a little roll cast. You need to know how to skip with a bait caster. You need to know how to skip with a spinning rod. You need to know how to make a sidearm cast with a spinning rod, a backhanded cast with a spinning rod. There are tons of different casts, and not just make the cast, but you need to be able to put it where you want to put it. And that takes nothing. That's just practice. It's the same with you guys at golf, getting out there on that putting green and spending time putting. It's the same with your bass fishing. And guys, I can tell you right now, it's obvious as it seems, and as simple as it seems, and as easy as it seems, that is the biggest thing that I see that holds people back. It really does. And it's the thing about it, it's weird. It's so obvious. I don't see why people don't understand that. So do yourself a favor, man. Just practice as much as you can cast. And if you're not at the lake, you've got 10 or 15 minutes to go out there and set up some targets in your yard and try to hit it. Learn different casts. You're going to be amazed at the difference that you see as far as your fishing ability. Once you learn to become a good caster, nobody's going to be an expert master caster, but once you can put the lure where pretty much you want to put it, And once you understand casting angles and once you understand boat positioning, those three elements right there, when you put those three elements together, the success that you have and your consistency that you're going to have in bass fishing is just going to go through the roof. It's going to multiply your success rate far better than anything that you've ever seen. That's just a few things off the top of my head, guys. Well, like I said, if this video goes good, you guys like this content, we'll do a lot more, because I've got years of experience to share with you on every aspect of the things that are obvious and not obvious, and subtle and not subtle. And that's why I always say bass fishing is the most complicated sport in the world. It's the most difficult sport in the world, simply because there's so many variables, controlled variables, uncontrolled variables. You're dealing with an inanimate object, the fish, that they've got their own mind. And that's what makes it so fun, though. I mean, that's what makes it so incredibly fun. Bass fishing is just the greatest sport on the earth. And, those of us have done it this long understand that. And if you're just getting into it, you're going to really enjoy the journey that you have if you stay with it. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk later.